working for many years in the studio of artist Olafur Eliasson, whom you may know from exhibitions here in New York at MoMA or projects like the New York City waterfalls that we did here a number of years back, and whose works are really all about engaging, about defining tools with which you can see your environment in different and in novel ways. And I was quite happy when Cyril invited us to come here and to discuss something that we could potentially do together, because at the studio, we've been working for many years on various different strands and trajectories of doing things that could have an impact, of doing things that could engage you, of finding a way to communicate, really. And what you're seeing in the background is an installation which is changing a space, rather similar to this one, with one simple little element installed in the center of it. And the idea that we can shape our surroundings, we shape them by seeing them, we shape them like these guys by walking around in them, by creating shadows, projections, by being part of the creative process, is quite interesting to me. The notion that we came from science to science fiction and now are coming to arts and the creative sphere, and the question of what we can do together is what interests us. Really, we've seen arts for many years, and here you see the technology behind it, as a means to create a toolkit that we can work with, a toolkit that can engage in multiple ways. And we've expanded that notion from installations, which are really about the beauty of seeing your surroundings, to installations that's changed the way museum spaces were conceived. This is actually a natural landscape installed in the Kunsthaus Bregenz many years ago. The idea that you can bring nature into the museum, you can showcase it, you can start thinking about how you act inside a museum, outside of the museums. We're all basically urbanites. I live in Berlin, a lot of you live in New York or in other places of the world. And it's important for us to understand that our surroundings are not disconnected from us. And to bridge that, I think art can make a big statement. We've done things like coloring rivers green, just to make you see that there's actually a river flowing through the landscape or through your city. And here's a picture from the Brooklyn Bridge, actually. How many of you have seen the East River, or how many of you have looked at the Hudson and really considered it a natural landscape? To make these waterfalls, we had to talk to, I think, 22 agencies, from the fishery to the Crayfish Conservation Society to, of course, all elements related to security in this country. And it was an interesting engagement because the idea was that we would get people to see their surroundings in a novel way, to see how they could relate to this river around the city, and that even in New York you have a natural landscape that is going into town. And we've taken that notion and expanded it towards architecture, towards creating spaces that we could come together in. This is a concert house and conference center in Iceland, in Reykjavik, the facade of which we designed from Olafur Eliasson's studio a few years ago. And again, it's an experiment in creating a different way of understanding how a wall, for example, could be constructed, how something could reflect into the city around it, how something could make you feel on the inside when you actually traverse it. And we've expanded that to, for example, make a rooftop addition to a museum in Aarhus. And this work, if you enter it, is very much about seeing the city in different colors. So as you walk through this colorful ring, the city will change from hues of red to purple, going on to yellows and greens. A simple notion. If I move a little bit on the stage, I will see my surroundings in a new way. I will see you in a different light. I will see you differently. And understanding that my movement, my engagement has a consequence of how I see the surroundings is the first step to understanding that I could also have an impact and do something differently. And that is where even the artworks make their course towards understanding that the oceans are important to all of us. We've taken that notion also now to form another entity within Olafur Studio. It's called Studio Other Spaces, and it is essentially an architectural company, you could say, but maybe it's also an architectural research laboratory. And this is the idea for a museum based on the waterfront area in an area of Denmark, where instead of building a monolithic block that would stop nature from accessing that site, we want to build a number of drums that are connected into the ground. And the tide, which alters about 2 meters at that stage, so 6 feet, will be coming in occasionally and will flood parts of that building, will flood parts of the outside surroundings. So there would be an interaction in the museum space with the water and with the surroundings. Coming from the art world, one of the challenges we see is that museums tend to be these areas like ivory towers that are shut off from reality. And of course, they're even more shut off from nature. And we want to bring that together, and we want to investigate how we can do that. So the process is really similar in the art studio as it is in architectural studio, and a lot of you coming from the creative world will know that, but we think there's a way of implementing that into a discussion like Parley to make something happen. And it's really a step-by-step system. It's the question, how do we change this thinking into doing that really moves us around? And I think there's something that we can all gain from coming together, from assembling, from using our creative powers in a shared way. The studio is a space where we also, and this is where science fiction becomes interesting, talk about how we verbalize what we do. What is the narrative that we try to tell? How is it that we engage you? How is it that we engage everyone in understanding that we have to participate, we have to communicate, we have to collaborate to make something happen? And some of that are mind boards going through imagery. Some of it is actually physically building things, making little models, making maquettes, mirrors, lights, shining a light on things. And other things take very concrete forms, like a project which is a small solar lamp that we're making, and that is also an individual company coming out of the studio called Little Sun, and I have one with me, incidentally. It's very much about shining a light on things, really. You can use it creatively, like in the image, you can make drawings with it, but essentially it's very much about coming together to shine a light, to have an event, to have an activity. And all of that for a really, really simple but terrible cause. 1.2 billion people in the world don't have access to energy. Children study next to kerosene lanterns in the evening. This is in Ethiopia. The image is taken by Hanu and his little sister with a prototype of our lamp from a while ago. By now we've taken this to reality. You can buy it here at the MoMA shop, and you can buy it in rural Ethiopia. So it's very much about bringing the world together, not with second-rate, second-degree products or projects, but with something that actually allows us to engage collaboratively. And this, albeit slightly damaged image, is a little shop that we have in Zimbabwe. And all of these ideas, all of these notions, the feeling that we can investigate different things together, led us to working with Cyril and a little bit also with Tim and Bionic already, on thinking about a space that we could create together, a space that would be a symbol of Parley, a symbol of the oceans. And we just sketched out throughout the past 2 weeks this little idea for a beachfront, waterfront element, something that has come out of the ocean that creates, made of, obviously, ideally recycled bionic fabrics, that makes a space for gathering, a space for sharing thoughts, a space for coming together and engaging. And we believe that you can implement something like this in a very, very good way. For example, setting it on the beach with minimal impact, something you can take away again completely, something that could travel around and lobby for the cause of seeing the world and seeing oceans together, and understanding that every little step we take can make a difference and has the potential of impact. Coming together to do that, I think, is really a crucial thought for all of us. And this could be us coming together again in a beautiful place in the world, closer to the ocean, hopefully by that time having done more. Definitely a few of us having collaborated already at that point.